Now this is a fight I could take. Ding! Oh, I have such a good ding! Nearly got that one. It's Katie's health, okay. Katie's actually not, as much as it's a joke that Katie's bad at PvP, she can melee sometimes, so I'm cautious. She's pinning herself in a bad spot. She's running from me though, most importantly. Got her! Okay. GG. 4 gold. Did they have no gold? Oh my god, they had no gold. That is sadness. Okay, these had. I got 3 kills. It honestly, honestly, it hasn't sent me that, hasn't put me that much into the game because they don't have gold. Let me go double check where Quill died just in case Katie didn't pick up some, like gold or something. It's still gonna be one of the teams of 3 that's gonna win. I'm not gonna win, no shadow of a doubt. Yeah, root for one of them. They're both the season 1 team, so it makes sense. Fuck, don't ignore me. I say ignore me, then I take a shot. Their bows still should only do half a heart to me, so can't imagine why it would change. So, you know, always that. American FaZe is a scary team at 2. Probably have healing. They ran that way, so let's juke. Who is that? That's max 50. That's the whole team. They're coming after me. Let's lose them in the woods. Oh, they're shooting someone. What? Wait, that's Joey. That's Joey is chasing them. So I've only ever seen green team as a team of 2. And it's always been Kevin and Joey. I don't know where Sid is. It's odd. Let's just do a loopsy loop. To the woods. Don't side chords actually. Oh, I'll get back in. Okay, for meetup, I don't like doing this. I've been doing it rounds a lot recently. I'm gonna turn. Where's that one? I'm gonna keep that one on so I can track when I'm within 0-0 range. It's only fair. Oh, cool stuff is still here. Is there any gold? There is gold! Oh my god, there is gold. Okay. I don't know why that golden texture had texture worked and the other one didn't. So power 3, that's fine. Okay, let's get rid of some of this. Don't need 2 diamonds, don't need that, don't need that. Throw out my coal, that's no biggie. Yeah, I'm good. What showers do I have? Plenty. Ah, fuck, they spotted me. It said. Did I see a diamond helmet over there? I feel like I did. Fix my mic sensitivity for a sec there. Hit. 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 I hear a zombie, but I don't see it. I'm not at meetup. Okay. I'm tanking hits. I'm gonna die, but I'm tanking hits, so I can try and do my best here. Oh, that was a far hit. Good job. It's not a fight. It's not the fight we should eat. This should be. I'm just gonna hurt him real bad. See, I'm just gonna hurt him real bad, and then that team's there can clean up. Look, they're coming. If I lure him. See? So just swoop around. That's the one. Green better not still be going after me. For the sake of the game, green have got to go for red. Because otherwise any other fight is just guaranteeing red to win. See, it's game theory. Game theory. I mean, purple might also win because they're getting they're a bit late to 0-0. Face took damage. I was only one heart though, so either he might have beefy armor actually. Considering I have beefy armor. I know I'm kind of not like fighting. I'm kind of not doing much fighting, but like I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know what I'm gonna do at this point. It's kind of tricky. It's kind of real tricky. I'm in a real bad spot. You'll be in a solo. I think they're up there. Where's red? Red's not here. Oh shit. American Sid just both got hit there. That's so not good. Red's gonna. That's red. Can I take a pot shot at him? Nah, missed. Okay, where are they? I can't fight red. I'm just gonna feed him. Although I don't have healing. I'm gonna feed him, but it's just gonna be armor. I have no gold. I have no heads. I just have apples. Apples might be what they need, though. Don't chase. Apples might be what they need, though. Oh yeah, invisible mob. Fuck. Invisible skeleton. Let me look. Apples might be what they need, though. There's a crafting table there. That marks it. I'll take American. Or American run. American kill me easily. American's better than me. I'm a tier 3. Considering I haven't hit him once yet. Yeah. She did a heart. Fuck. I killed American. Oh, I nearly got phased! I nearly got phased! Oh my god! GG! Oh my god, I nearly got phased! Oh my god, that's so good. I hurt my stomach. Oh my god, I cramped myself there. Oh my god. Oh! I cramped myself! Ah! I cramped. Oh, I'm cramping. Oh. My belly hurts.
Hey there, I'm Greg Lamb, aka the Small Biz Doer with the Slater Group. I'm here today to talk to you about one of my biggest passions, which is matching up source documentation to your accounting records. Well, it's not actually one of my biggest passions, it's one of my biggest pain points. But I am passionate about finding ways to spend less time doing it. And when I talk about source documentation, I'm usually referring to expense receipts for purchases. You'll hear me say source documentation a lot, so that's what I'm referring to. Now, some people might think, isn't source documentation obsolete because you have bank feeds, and bank feeds have a lot of good data? Well, yes, it does have a lot of good data, but you still need source documentation because you need to prove that your transaction is a legitimate transaction. So you need that. But going back to bank feed data, The type of data that you can get off bank feeds, you have the date, you have the dollar amount, you have the payment account, which is probably your bank or credit card account, and you can usually just figure out the vendor name based on the description. So you got those things, but there's a couple things missing. And one of them is the categorization. How do you categorize the transaction? And the other one is taxes. This isn't so important in the United States, but in countries outside the United States, like the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, this becomes very important. So, bank feeds are great, but source documentation is also necessary when reconciling transactions. Accounting software that gives me easy access to source documentation, well, that's the dream. Xero has a files feature, so you might think it's pretty straightforward to match up your source documentation with your transactions in Xero. Well, it's not quite so. And so that's why today I'm going to show you a few methods for matching up your source documentation with your accounting records and show you the pros and cons of each method. And before you get all up in arms and say, well, why don't you use an add-on? You can use add-ons, and I will cover that in another video. But for today, what I'm going to talk about is how do you deal with files natively in Xero? All right, so let's get started. This is the Xero dashboard. To get to the files page, just click on the folder icon. To get files in here, you can either upload them, take a photo with your webcam, or email them in using this email address. The inbox represents files that have not been dealt with, so think of it as an unprocessed box. Once you attach the file to a transaction, it disappears from the inbox. So there are several ways to process files, the first being quite obvious. So all you need to do is click on the file, see what it's about, and say, okay, I know what this is about, and then you go close the file and create a new transaction. Now the pro with this, it's straightforward and it's very systematic. I mean, you just open a file, create a new transaction. Easy to do. But the cons, a lot of this data entry may be redundant because you have bank feeds that already provide a lot of the data. So unless you never enter a transaction without a receipt, there's a good chance you'll end up with duplicate entries. This is also time consuming. This method doesn't account for every transaction type. So if this is a receipt for a customer's invoice, there's no pay invoice transaction type. You'll need to go out of the files page to manage this. So as you can see, handling files by entering them directly from the inbox seems simple and easy, but it's just not the most efficient way. So another way you can process files is to do them as you reconcile transactions. Let's pop on over to the banking page and then select an account to reconcile. What you do is use the banking information to enter a transaction in. Then you click on Add Details. From here, if you click on the file icon, this will bring up the option to add a file from your library. Choosing that will show you your files page and by default, show the inbox. So all you need to do is pick the file or files and add them. Then you save the transaction and then hit OK to confirm. Now the pros to this method is there's less data entry work, especially if Xero's bank rules are kicking in and entering some information for you. Even if Xero's bank rules aren't processing the transaction, the date, the amount, and payment account are already entered for you, since that information is provided by the bank feed. So you only need to enter the vendor name and the categorization. Now the cons. If you have more than a few files in the inbox, how do you know which file to choose? Clicking on each file one at a time and looking at them is a terrible way to do this if you have more than a few files in your inbox. So this would only be viable if you reconcile every day and files are actually in the inbox ready to process. This is very unlikely. Now, if you name the files beforehand, it would make them easier to choose. So perhaps you could do some pre-processing and look at files and see what the dollar amount is and then name the file that dollar amount. So that way, when you go to attach a file, you know that, okay, so this dollar amount is $14 and the transaction I'm looking at is $14. So they're probably a good match. Naming files before attaching them can make them easier to work with when you have lots of files. So attaching as you reconcile can work if you're on top of things and only have a few transactions. But once you start getting a lot of files and transactions, it starts falling apart. That's where a third solution comes into play, which is attaching the files after transactions are entered. To be clear, the second method I just described was attaching files as you create them while reconciling. The third method asks you to enter transactions without source documentation, and then after all your transactions are entered, attach the files to those transactions. So let's say that all the transactions in the Reconcile tab have been entered. From here, we go to the Account Transactions page. All these transactions are reconciled, so you should be able to trust the dollar amounts and dates. And if your files are in Xero, the best thing I find is to open up two windows. And one of the windows displays your files page, while the other shows your Account Transactions page. What you do now is preview a file in the files page, then go over to the transactions page and search for that transaction. Well, with the possibility of 200 transactions on a single page, this is no easy task. So the best way I found is to search for the dollar amount. You can do this by using Control or Command plus F, and this pops up the search window. And then you just type in the dollar amount. For most transactions, there's only a match or two, so I find it's pretty easy to get to your transactions quickly. Once you've found a transaction that seems to match, you click on the transaction. From here, you verify that the data entered is correct. Then you click on the Files icon, add a file from the library, and choose the file. Since you are previewing the file, you know which file to choose, which would normally be the first file in the inbox. So the pros to this method. This avoids duplicate entry, since you're working with reconciled transactions. Overall, I find this method faster than the other two methods, but it's still not nearly as fast as I'd like it to be. It's faster because creating transactions using the bank feed requires you to manually enter less data. Now the cons. One of the cons is that you'll be entering all your transactions blind, or in other words, without source documentation. This can work for about 80% or even 90% of transactions, but obviously you can't process all transactions blind. If your inbox has files from different bank and credit card accounts, then searching through a single account transactions page won't work. So you need to preview your receipt, figure out what account was used, and then switch the accounts to match. And that's another step. So this third way, attaching the files after the fact, can be faster than the previous two methods, but it isn't ideal. There's still a lot of switching windows and searching going on. This has led me to my current approach, which is a hybrid of all the methods described above. It's not a pretty approach, but for processing files natively in Zero, it's the best I have so far. After I show you this approach, I would love to hear about how you process files natively in Zero. The first thing I try with this hybrid approach is to separate transactions by account. So, if a transaction is associated with a bank account, I put it into a bank account folder. And if a transaction is associated with a credit card, I put it into a credit card folder. I do this for all the different bank account types. I also have a folder just for customer bills, a folder for bank statements, and so on. So, I pre-process the transactions. I find that most people know enough when capturing a receipt that this type of pre-processing doesn't add a lot of extra time. But I don't like the way that folders work in Zero. You see, when you attach a file found in the inbox to a transaction, it disappears out of the inbox. But for all the other folders, if you attach a transaction, it simply gets a link showing where the transaction is attached to. While I don't like how the inbox handles files, pre-processing files into folders can work because when it's attached to a transaction, it won't be choosable when you use the Add File from Library feature. So what I do to organize files is use my computer's file folder system. But Greg, this is not native, it's something outside of Zero. Well, yes and no. When I'm talking about not using add-ons, I'm talking about not explicitly using a Zero add-on. Personally, I use Dropbox to store files because it can sync across devices and be as accessible as cloud accounting software. However, it can be any type of document management system found on a local computer. Anyways, what I do is have all the files on a local folder system, with the files separated by account type or transaction type. Then I go into Zero and process as many transactions as possible without a receipt using the reconcile page. If I can't process a transaction in the reconcile page, I leave it unreconciled. So once I'm done with all the transactions, I go to the account transactions page. And what I'll do is I'll have an account folder on my computer open with a preview of the file and see if it matches a transaction. I do this by using the in-browser search feature and search for the dollar amount. I then find the match, open up the transaction, verify the details, and then drag and drop the file into it to attach it. Then for the file that's found locally, I actually move the file over to a folder so that I know it's been processed in Zero. I do this so that I know I've taken care of the file, it's safely attached in Zero, and I don't need to worry about it anymore. Now what happens with this method is that if you haven't entered a transaction into Zero, it won't show up in the account transactions page. So if I have a transaction that can't be found in the account transactions page, I then go over to the reconcile tab and try to find a match. This is where I usually search my files locally to see if it matches the transaction value found in Zero. Because my system is usually good at OCR, I can usually type in the dollar amount or the vendor name and find a match. Now, if you had a document for every transaction, this would work, but obviously this never happens 100% of the time. So you'll still have transactions where no source documentation can be found and you don't know what the transaction is for. This is where I use the discuss feature to ask a client what this transaction is for. Since the link found in the URL can be cut and pasted into an email, I find I can provide the client with links to the pages that I want them to look into and answer my discuss questions. So what are the pros? Out of all the methods, this hybrid method cuts down on data entry and data duplication the most. It's also the fastest way I've found to process documents so far. Now the cons. It requires pre-processing source documentation, as you need to put the files into separate account folders. This hybrid approach is not perfect. This is where I blame the software. No, seriously, I do. Attaching source documentation to records is cumbersome because the software, while making it possible, it just doesn't make it easy. So if the software can't do it, you'd think that add-ons might fill in this gap. I'll cover add-ons in another video, but I'll quickly say that the main reason why add-ons don't do a much better job is because add-ons don't have access to bank feed data. So without access to this, the best that add-ons can do is make best guesses on how to create a transaction in Zero and hope they match up when it comes time to reconcile. The answer that seems obvious to me is to marry the data found in files to those found in the bank feed. Add-ons are great at extracting data out of receipts using OCR, while Zero is great at entering transactions using the bank feed and its bank feed rules. Ideally, I'd like to see Zero use OCR natively on files so that it can automatically suggest files that match a transaction as you reconcile them in the banking page. In my ideal world, it would show a view of the document and you can say, yes, attach this, or no, it's not a match. This would eliminate so much of the back and forth. Honestly, if Zero's OCR were only able to pull out the final dollar amount of a document, this type of matching would probably work 90% of the time. If you add in another data point like the date, the matching rate would probably be above 95% of the time. Now, if Zero can't or won't do this, then if an add-on could get access to Zero's bank feed data and do this, this would be the next best scenario. I now have a question for you, ladies and gentlemen. How do you handle files in Zero? Do you use any of the methods outlined above? Do you perhaps have a better solution than my hybrid approach? Let me know, please. I'd really love to know. And if there's a good solution, I'll maybe post another video with it. So I'm Greg Lamb, aka the Small Biz Doer of the Slitter Group, and I'll catch you on the flip side. See ya.